When I pulled into my sister's driveway that afternoon, I wasn't thinking about her husband. I was thinking about crashing on her couch, raiding her fridge, and catching up like we always did. But fate, or something dirtier, had other plans. Her house was empty except for a truck parked out front. That truck, with its dented bumper and "I fix things" bumper sticker, belonged to Caleb, my brother-in-law. Caleb was everything you'd expect from a guy who worked construction and still drank beer straight from the bottle. Broad shoulders, tan skin, veins riding his arms like highways. I'd always thought he was ridiculously good-looking, but off-limits. Straight. Married to my sister, Madison. End of story. At least, it should have been. Inside, the air smelled like fresh sawdust and something musky that made my skin prickle. I tossed my bag down and called out, "Hello?" Nothing. Only the faint thud of music coming from somewhere upstairs. I was halfway up the steps when I realized it was coming from their bedroom. I didn't think, just followed the noise. The door was half open, slivered light spilling across the hall. I nudged it wider with 2 fingers, ready to say something casual. But the words caught in my throat. Caleb was passed out on the bed, sprawled like he owned the world. A towel hung dangerously low around his hips, barely doing its job. His chest rose and fell steadily, muscles shifting under tanned skin. One thick arm draped over his face. And the towel, well, it wasn't hiding much. His cock had slipped free, heavy against his thigh, shameless in the afternoon light. I froze, heart hammering. 1,000 alarms screamed in my head, but my eyes disobeyed. I stared. Too long. Too hungrily. He was big. Not just in size but in presence. Every line of his body was a fucking invitation to sin. I should have left. Should have backed out and slammed the door, pretended I hadn't seen anything. Instead, my feet locked to the floor. Heat surged through me, pooling low and dark. Caleb shifted slightly, the towel riding even lower. A soft grunt left his throat, deep and rough, and my knees went weak. I caught myself against the doorframe, breathing too fast. What the hell was wrong with me? This was Madison's husband. Her straight, beer-guzzling, fix-anything husband. I had no business looking at him like that. No business wanting him. I squeezed my eyes shut and wrenched myself back into the hall. I stumbled into the guest room and slammed the door behind me, heart pounding like I'd just committed a crime. Collapsing onto the bed, I stared at the ceiling, my body thrumming with electric need and shame. The image of Caleb, bare, vulnerable, irresistible, burned behind my eyelids. It wasn't the first time I'd crushed on a straight guy. It wasn't even the worst. But this? This was Madison's life. Her future. Her goddamn husband. And I was already halfway down the road to betrayal. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Madison came home late from work, complaining about a coworker who couldn't find his own ass with both hands. I laughed in the right places, nodded when needed, but my mind was somewhere else, still upstairs, locked on Caleb's body, his scent, the heavy heat of him asleep and unaware. When Caleb finally came downstairs around 9, wearing nothing but sweatpants slung low on his hips, I damn near dropped my drink. He ruffled his messy hair and grinned. "Hey man. Didn't hear you come in." "Yeah," I croaked, clearing my throat. "Just got here a few hours ago." His smile was lazy, easy, like he didn't have a clue. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he hadn't noticed the towel slipping. Maybe he had. Madison yawned and kissed him on the cheek, then mumbled something about a shower and disappeared upstairs, leaving me alone with him. Caleb grabbed a beer from the fridge, twisting the cap off with one hand. "You settling in?" "Yeah," I said, trying not to stare at the way his abs flexed with the movement. "Thanks for letting me crash here." He leaned against the counter, beer dangling from 2 fingers. "Anytime. Your family." The way he said it, low, slow, looking me dead in the eyes, made something twist painfully in my chest. I knew better than to read into it. But God, it was hard not to. "So," he said, taking a swig. "You still working at that gym?" "Yeah. Personal training, mostly. He nodded appreciatively, eyes raking over me in a way that made my skin spark. Figured. You're looking solid. Was it my imagination, or was there heat in his voice? No. Couldn't be. Still, the words clung to me like sweat. I drained my glass and set it down harder than necessary. I think I'm gonna crash early. Long drive. Caleb smirked like he knew exactly why I was running. Suit yourself. As I turned toward the stairs, I could feel his gaze trailing down my back, lingering. Burning. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was everything. Either way, I knew one thing for sure. I was fucked. And not in the way I wanted. The next morning, sunlight poured into the kitchen like nothing had happened. Except everything had changed. I found Caleb at the stove, flipping pancakes in just a pair of worn jeans slung low on his hip. No shirt. No shoes. Just tanned, muscular skin and a cocky grin when he caught me staring. "Mornin', pretty boy," he teased, tossing a pancake onto a plate. Pretty boy. I swallowed hard and grabbed a mug from the counter, pretending to be casual. Morning. Caleb's eyes danced over me, lingering too long. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, his chest dusted with a line of dark hair that disappeared below his waistband. There was no pretending he didn't know what he was doing. "You sleep all right?" he asked, voice smooth. "Fine," I lied, sipping scalding coffee to hide my face. Madison breezed into the kitchen, hair wet from a shower, already pulling on heels. "Sorry boys. Big meeting. Won't be back till late." She kissed Caleb quick on the lips, tossed me a wave, and was gone before I could say anything. The front door slammed. The house was ours. Caleb chuckled low in his throat. "Guess it's just you and me, kid." I didn't correct him, didn't tell him we were barely 5 years apart. Instead, I nodded, heart hammering behind my ribs. We ate in a strange, loaded silence, the kind that buzzed just under the skin. Every move Caleb made, the flex of his forearms, the roll of his hips as he leaned back in his chair, felt like a fucking dare. When the plates were empty, he stood and stretched, arms over his head, abs tightening into perfect ridges. His jeans hung dangerously low, showing the deep V of his hip. He caught me looking and smirked. "Hey," he said casually, "I could use an extra hand with a project if you're up for it." I was up for a lot of things, none of them appropriate. Still, I nodded, playing it cool. "Sure. What do you need?" He tossed me a wrench. "Just a little plumbing." I followed him outside to the garage, where a sink was half dismantled and leaking onto the concrete. Caleb knelt down, back muscles rippling under his skin as he worked. I crouched beside him, the heat of his body bleeding into mine. He showed me where to hold a pipe, his fingers brushing mine deliberately. Not accidental. Not innocent. The touch lingered a breath too long. "Steady," he murmured, voice dipping lower. I tightened my grip, but my hands were slick, trembling. Caleb shifted closer, his thigh pressing against mine, solid and hot. His scent hit me, soap, sweat, man, and my head spun. He didn't move away. "You nervous or something?" he asked, smirking. "Nah," I said, voice cracking. He chuckled, low and wicked, and leaned in closer until I could feel his breath against my neck. "I think you are." I opened my mouth to snap back something smart, but Caleb's hand landed heavy on my thigh, grounding me in place. Not a brotherly touch. Not even close. He squeezed gently, fingers digging into muscle, and my whole body lit up like a fucking Christmas tree. "Relax," he whispered. "I don't bite. A beat. Unless you want me to." My throat went dry. He was flirting. Full tilt. No more games. The pipe clattered to the floor, the noise startling both of us. Caleb laughed, low and deep, and pulled back, just enough to let me breathe again. But his hand didn't leave my thigh. "Tell you what," he said, standing up slow, his body towering over me. "I'll finish up here. Why don't you grab us a couple beers?" It wasn't a suggestion. I scrambled to my feet, nodding too quickly. My legs were shaking. I hated how obvious it was. Inside, I grabbed 2 beers from the fridge, cracked them open, and leaned against the counter, trying to get my shit together. I had 2 choices: pretend none of this was happening, or admit the truth. I wanted him. Badly. More than I'd wanted anything in a long, long time. Footsteps padded across the floor. Caleb sauntered in, wiping grease from his hands onto a rag. His jeans sat even lower now, the edge of his black boxer briefs visible. He plucked a beer from my hand, took a long pull, then set it down hard. Without a word, he closed the distance between us. Every nerve in my body screamed. He was so close I could feel the heat radiating off him, could see the dark stubble along his jawline, the flecks of green in his brown eyes. He reached up, knuckles brushing my chin in a featherlight touch. A teasing smile played on his lips. "You're playing a dangerous game, pretty boy," he murmured. "Me?" I croaked, barely able to breathe. He chuckled again, deep and knowing. Then he stepped back, letting the air rush back in like a wave. The moment broke, but the damage was done. "Finish your beer," Caleb said, his voice rough. "We've got a long day ahead." He turned and walked away, the muscles in his back flexing with every step. And just like that, the chase was on. The day dragged like wet cement. Caleb found every excuse to be near me, brushing past when he didn't have to, leaning too close when handing over tools, flashing that lazy grin that set my insides on fire. By the time the sun dipped below the trees, I was raw, pulled so tight I could barely breathe. We grilled burgers out back, drinking beer straight from the bottle. Madison still wasn't home. No texts. No calls. Nothing but a yawning silence that dared us to be reckless. Caleb leaned back in his chair, legs spread wide, casual and cocky. His gaze pinned me to the spot like a nail to wood. "You ever been with a guy?" he asked suddenly, voice low and rough. The question sucker-punched me. He wasn't playing anymore. I licked my lips, feeling the weight of the moment settle between us. "Yeah," I said, steady as I could. "I have." He nodded slowly, like he already knew the answer. Like he just needed to hear me say it out loud. "You like it?" His voice was pure smoke. I swallowed hard. "Yeah. I do." Caleb's mouth curled into a slow, dangerous smile. He set his beer down carefully, rising to his feet in one smooth motion. Without breaking eye contact, he crossed the deck. Each step deliberate. Heavy. I couldn't move even if I wanted to. He stopped a breath away, so close I could see the flecks of gold in his eyes, the faint scar along his jawline. "Show me," he said. It wasn't a question. It was a demand. Something inside me snapped. I grabbed him by the front of his jeans, yanking him forward. He crashed into me, mouth finding mine with brutal, hungry force. There was nothing soft about the kiss, just teeth, tongue, raw need. Caleb groaned deep in his throat, hands sliding up my sides, grabbing, claiming. I pressed closer, feeling the hard line of him against my thigh. He wasn't holding back. He wasn't pretending. He wanted this. Wanted me. His fingers tangled in my hair, tugging my head back to expose my throat. He mouthed along my jaw, down my neck, biting hard enough to leave marks. I gasped, hips grinding against his instinctively. "You like that, pretty boy?" he rasped against my skin. "Fuck yes," I breathed. He laughed, low and wicked. Then he grabbed my wrist and shoved it against the wall of the house, pinning me there with his body. "You're mine tonight," he growled. "Understand?" I nodded, chest heaving. "Say it," he ordered. "I'm yours," I whispered. Caleb's eyes burned with something wild, something desperate. He kissed me again, slower this time, deeper, like he needed to memorize every inch of my mouth. I could taste the beer on his tongue, the salt of his skin, the heat that rolled off him in waves. He rocked his hips against me, grinding hard and slow, dragging guttural moans from my throat. Clothes became obstacles. My hands fumbled with his jeans, shoving them down just enough. He helped, impatient, rough. Then he was there. Hot, heavy, throbbing against me. I wrapped a hand around him, marveling at the weight, the heat. He hissed through his teeth, hips jerking into my touch. "Fuck," he grunted. "You're gonna be the death of me." He grabbed my ass, squeezing hard, pulling me closer until there wasn't a breath of space between us. We kissed like we were starving. Desperate. Hungry. Lost. The world shrank to just this. The press of skin on skin, the way his hands roamed my body like he owned it, the raw, animal noise he made when I bit his bottom lip. We stumbled back into the house, knocking over a chair, laughing breathlessly. Caleb shoved me against the kitchen counter, palming my chest, pushing up my shirt. His mouth followed, licking, biting, teasing. I tangled my fingers in his hair, tugging hard, earning another deep growl from his throat. He dropped to his knees without hesitation, yanking my shorts down, bearing me to him. I gasped, gripping the counter so hard my knuckles turned white. He looked up at me, pupils blown wide, mouth parted. "You're so fucking beautiful," he muttered. Before I could respond, he took me in his mouth. Heat. Wetness. Pressure. My head slammed back against the cabinet, hips bucking uncontrollably. Caleb held me down with both hands, taking his time, savoring every second, every twitch, every broken sound that spilled from my lips. It was messy, filthy, perfect. When I came, it was with a shout, hands fisting his hair, body shuddering against his mouth. He swallowed it all, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand, a dark, satisfied look on his face. I slid to the floor, legs useless. For a moment, we just sat there, breathing hard, staring at each other. Something passed between us. Raw, electric, undeniable. Caleb leaned in, brushing his forehead against mine. "This doesn't change anything," he whispered, but his voice shook. I nodded, even though we both knew it was a lie. Everything had changed, and there was no going back now. The silence after was heavier than any words could be. Caleb slumped against the fridge, head tipped back, chest rising and falling in uneven gasps. I sat on the floor, legs sprawled, shirt wrinkled, skin flushed and stinging from his touch. Reality slammed into me like a freight train. Madison. My sister. His wife. Guilt tore through my gut, sharp and ugly. But under it, hotter and fiercer, was something worse, desire still burning low and steady. Caleb opened his eyes, looked at me without a hint of regret. If anything, he looked satisfied. "Get up," he said hoarsely, voice cracked open. I stood on shaky legs, pulling my shorts back up, wiping my mouth with the back of my hand. He stalked toward me, grabbing my chin, forcing me to look at him. "You're not running from this," he said. "I'm not," I whispered, voice raw. His hand dropped away. He stared at me for a long moment, jaw working like he wanted to say more but couldn't find the words. Then the front door clicked open. Madison's heels clattered against the tile. Panic seized me. We looked like hell, hair a mess, clothes crooked, the kitchen reeking of sweat and sin. Caleb moved fast, snagging 2 beers from the counter, tossing one to me. "Play it cool," he mouthed. I barely managed to nod before Madison swept into the room, setting her bag down with a sigh. "God, I'm exhausted," she said, kicking off her heels. "You guys eat yet?" "Yeah," Caleb said smoothly, cracking his beer open like nothing had happened. "We grilled." Madison smiled at him, at us, without a single clue. I wanted to puke. "I'm gonna shower," she said, disappearing down the hall. The moment she was gone, Caleb rounded on me, close enough to make my heart stutter. "You belong to me now," he murmured. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. He smirked, knowing he had me pinned against an invisible wall. I hated how much I loved it. Later, after Madison fell asleep, I sat outside on the porch, nursing a beer and 1,000 regrets. The night was hot and thick, cicadas humming in the trees. Caleb dropped into the chair beside me, shirtless, wearing only loose gym shorts that left nothing to the imagination. He sat in silence for a long time, letting the darkness wrap around us. Finally, he spoke, voice rough as sandpaper. "You think this was a mistake?" he asked. I stared into the dark, heart hammering. I think," I said slowly, It's the realest thing I've felt in a long time. Caleb exhaled a shaky breath, running a hand through his messy hair. I shouldn't want you, he said. But I do. I turned to him. I don't want to be a secret. His jaw tightened. You won't be. Not forever. A bitter laugh escaped me. She's my sister, Caleb. I know, he said, eyes flashing. And I'm her husband. But you. He reached out, brushing his fingers against mine. You make me feel alive. I closed my eyes, swallowing the lump in my throat. This wasn't a fling. It wasn't drunken stupidity. It was messy, dangerous, real. And it was only just beginning. Caleb leaned in, forehead pressed against mine. I'm not letting you go, he whispered. I don't care what it costs. I believed him. God help me, I did. The door creaked behind us. Madison's voice floated out, sleepy and soft. Baby? Come to bed. Caleb pulled back, eyes locked on mine. I'll find a way, he promised. Then he stood, walking back inside without looking back, leaving me alone with the night, the guilt, and the impossible thrum of hope in my chest. Tomorrow the lies would pile higher. Tomorrow the cost of this would become clearer. But tonight? Tonight, for the first time in a long damn time, I didn't feel alone. I finished my beer, tipped my head back to look at the stars, and smiled a slow, dangerous smile. This was only the beginning, and I was ready to burn the whole world down for him,